Hey again, everyone. Dr. R covering some epi questions. Let's dive right in. Here is the lead in. Can we answer the question directly? The answer is no, so we need to go up to the question stem. First, I'm going to take a look at the question answers. I know that these are different types of study designs. And let's dive right into the stem. A pharmaceutical company wants to test the efficacy and safety. So now we start talking about phase of clinical trials. You'll talk at some point about the different phases of clinical trials of a new medication for treatment of hypertension. So we're looking at hypertension, and there's a new medication, so we're going to have a new drug. The company recruits 1,000 people that already have hypertension. So we have 1,000 people that have hypertension, and we are going to have a new drug. Let's see. Randomly assigns them to these groups. So that means there's going to be 500 people here with hypertension and 500 people here with hypertension. Right. Randomly assigns them to either receive the new medication or a placebo. In another video, I also said that it's not just a placebo, right? This is the experimental group, this is control group. Sometimes the control group can also be a gold standard medication, a medication that is currently on the market, but yet we want to come out with a new medication and see how that new medication compares to one that already exists. So not always is it a placebo, so keep that in mind. The patients are followed for 6 months, so that means they are followed for 6 months. That means we start here, and then over 6 months, we are now going to collect our data to monitor their blood pressure levels. So we might actually collect data several times, but we're going to stop at 6 months, and then we're going to compare over time, and we're going to look at their blood pressure. So the hope is that their blood pressures go down with the new medication. We're also going to talk about adverse effects and whether they adhere to it, because the adverse effects can also be high-risk things. They can also be things like side effects, which can affect medication adherence. Because if you have a side effect, so for instance, headaches are quite prevalent with this medication, that might affect the medication adherence. People don't want to take a medication, even if their blood pressure goes down, they don't want to take it because they have to deal with a headache all day long. Adverse effects can be things like severe effects. So you might have heart attacks, or you might have strokes, or something like that. Right. So is this a case control study? Remember, case control starts with cases. Do we start with cases? The answer is yes, because they all had hypertension, right? So we had hypertension in both our experimental and our control, the people that got the new drug and the people that got the placebo. But then, did we choose the controls? And the answer is no, we didn't. Because these are people with the disease and these are people without the disease. Both of ours actually have the disease. So, case control does not fit. Cohort study. Did we start with people who did not have the disease? The answer is no, they had the hypertension. In cohort study, we are looking for incidence, right? And the incidence comes from those that are new cases divided by those that are at risk. Because as we follow them over time, if we start here and we follow them over time, one might get the disease, another might get the disease. These become the numerator, And then the ones that are totally at risk are the entire people that are in this population, and that becomes your denominator. So that doesn't work. Crossover. I didn't hear anything about patients crossing over. So if we had our experimental and we had our control, we would collect data on them at a specific time. Then we would go through a washout period, and then they would cross over, and these guys would become the control, and these guys would become the experimental group. And then we would collect data again, and then we would compare them, and I don't see that happening. So then the cross-sectional study. Is this a cross-sectional study? Well, we can eliminate that right away because we looked at that over time, right? It was 6 months to monitor. A cross-sectional study looks at a specific period of time and collects that data at a specific period of time, not over time. So really we're left with an RCT, or randomized controlled trial, and that looks like exactly what we're doing here. So for me, this is the most correct answer, and I hope you agree.